word on the street is that we are going to be getting the most glorious of things next year. A set totally focused on the plane of Shandalar. And as a huge fan of Shandalar, my hype levels are at 1 million.
Magic. I am a wizard. History. I'm an old wizard. The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well. We are here for what for me is a joyous experience because it is rumored that we are going to be returning to the plane of Shandalar. But up until now, we've only gotten little peeks at it. We've never actually had a full-on set located in Shandalar, right? So for me, as a massive fan of Shandalar, this is super exciting. I decided we would do a new type of video that is called Rumors and Reprints. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over a number of cards that could easily be reprinted in the Shandalar set because everything we're going to look at actually is from the plane of Shandalar. Now, if you don't know much about Shandalar, it was mostly used in the old Microprose computer game. Essentially what happened was Dominaria was the world where most of what was going on with Magic. That's where everything was taking place. However, due to what happened with like Urza leveling a bunch of Dominaria with the Silex Blast and everything, Dominaria took on a very specific sort of like we've just survived the apocalypse style look, and they needed a plane that was a little more regular fantasy without that destroyed aspect to it. And that's really how Shandalar got firmed up into what it was. And then over the years, we got a number of different Magic cards that are actually set in the world of Shandalar. So we're going to go over a handful of cards that feel like the most likely choices for reprints for a Shandalar set. Understand that when it comes to cards that are set on Shandalar or reference Shandalar, there's literally only 29 cards in the entire history of Magic. Now, we're not going to look at all of them because of the bunch of them are wave them away, who cares level cards. But I bet you didn't know, or I mean, you might have figured out already that Kirkesh over here, Kirkesh is originally from Shandalar, which is something I didn't know until I actually started to go through the reprints, because Kirkesh was originally put into the Arabian Nights set. So it would be the last thing I would expect to actually be set on Shandalar, but nope, Kurd is a location on Shandalar, so we could theoretically be seeing Kirkesh make a return to Standard. I don't know how likely that is, but at the same time, I mean, we have a scenario where Kirkesh's power level isn't too high for today's Standard, right? 1 red mana for a 2/3 that requires you have a forest out. It's good, but it's by no means overpowered by today's standards, like concepts, right? Now, the artwork for this obviously is a very straightforward looking ape in the forest. You won't see artwork like this nowadays. I wanted to use the old school version because this is what I grew up with, and this is what you see in the actual Shandalar game. So out of all the cards we're going to look at, this is the only card that exists in the game based on Shandalar. And I'll mention, if you haven't already seen it, I'm literally live streaming the Shandalar game right now over on my Hatcher channel. So if you want to get a glimpse into some of the flavor behind the world, because the world has some really awesome flavor. We're going to do a lore video going over all that for Fantasy Geographic as well, because there's a lot to talk about with Shandalar, and I'm currently super hyped on Shandalar. So let's look at something a little more juicy than Kirkesh, and that is the Zathra Demon. Now this is a gigantic demonic beast, right? Look at it. It is 3 black and 3 for a 7/7 flying trampling demon. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature other than Zathra Demon. Then each opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. If you can't sacrifice a creature, tap Zathra Demon and you lose 7 life. So this is literally straight up a upgrade of Lord of the Pit. It's almost identical to a Lord of the Pit, because a Lord of the Pit is literally a 7/7 flying trampler and a demon that requires you to sacrifice a creature each turn. But the Zathra Demon adds on the fact that when you sacrifice the creature, each of your opponents loses life equal to that sacrificed creature's power, which makes him feel like an insanely powerful demon. He demands sacrifice, but then he takes the energy from that sacrificed being and uses it to drain the essence of planeswalkers. That is massively, massively intense and a huge step up from the old school Lord of the Pit. And if you go and watch those playthroughs that I'm talking about, you'll get to see Lord of the Pits firsthand. But this is a very vicious looking demon too. Those massive, gigantic, curved horns. And you can see he's leaping in the air in almost like a way that makes him feel similar to a ballet dancer, and there's this just massive vicious grin as he's leaping through the air that just makes it feel like this is all a game to him. Do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't care if you give him creatures to sacrifice and he causes pain to other planeswalkers, or if you can't feed him and then he causes you to lose 7 life as he just feeds on your life force. So it's all a big old game to the Zathra Demon. And that's actually not the only danger out there from Zathra. There's also the Zathra Necromancer, right? This is 1 black and 2 for a 2/2 human wizard. Whenever Zathra Necromancer or another human creature you control dies, create a 2/2 tapped black zombie creature token. And the flavor text says, "My command shall echo forever in their dusty skulls." This is an intense concept to me. The most striking part to me about this is that the necromantic magic that the Zathra Necromancer wields causes him to be reanimated. Now, there's a couple of different reasons that could be, right? One reason could be that simply trafficking in necromantic energy to that level infuses your body to the point where it's naturally, or I guess unnaturally, going to rise from the dead just based on all the necromantic power that's flown through you. Or there's the concept that the Zathra Necromancer literally sets up a triggered spell result that when they die, they want to be reanimated as one of these 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Now, it's interesting from that perspective to think about it, because the flavor text is somewhat dismissive of these sort of zombies, right? It's a grandiose sort of, "My commands shall echo forever in their dusty skulls," like they're nothing, right? So the idea, I think it's really just going to be the former situation, where they're reanimated by the force of the necromantic energies that they've dealt with, as opposed to intentionally being raised as one of these undead that they disdain, right? And you can see the artwork is very solid in terms of, you have the necromancer standing there. He's got his hand held forward in an imperious gesture with this dark necromantic energy flowing around it. You can see the undead that are moving forward at his command. The one in the foreground actually has the same necromantic energy emanating out of the eye sockets, which adds an extra level of connection between them and the necromancer. And you can see in the background the havoc that is being wreaked by these minions of the necromancer, because everything is dark and you can see the flames coming up as well. So they're probably burning down a village while the Zathra Necromancer looks for more bodies to animate. And it's interesting as well that this just automatically happens, right? There's no mana required to expended by you to create these zombie tokens. It happens automatically. But it's like this Zathra Necromancer is a specialist. They can only reanimate humans, right? They can't bring back any other kind of beast, but they're incredibly proficient at reanimating humans, which is an interesting concept. And if we did see this return, it would be a nod towards a human tribal concept. So I dig this card very much. Let's move on to the next possible reprint for Shandalar. And that is the Colonial Hydra. So there are the Colonial Wilds located on Shandalar that have massive beasts, and actually even have their own specific language that they speak in that area. Now, the Colonial Hydra is a prime example of the insanity that you can find in this part of the plane. So it's 2 green and 3 for essentially a 4/4 trampler, because it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. It has trample. Whenever it attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, which is insanely powerful. I'm not even sure how that works. Every time it starts lumbering through the forest, it just multiplies the number of heads, but also anything else that is similar to it that has +1/+1 counters, those double as well. I'll admit that I don't 100% understand how the magic works, but I love the concept behind this. Just this massive, insane Hydra, ever growing and unstoppable. And you can see like how hungry and insane it is, because it's literally like every head is pointing in a different direction, just screaming out, just trying to eat everything. You can see one of them has caught some kind of gigantic bird or drake. Another one is reaching up to snag it out of the sky. And then down at the bottom, another one is curling around to eat some birds. They're all just, it's like a dog leaping after a bug in the air, but every head is doing it independently. And the flavor text says, even Baloths fear its feeding time. And that's pretty intense, because Baloths are massive, massive beasts. But the Colonial Hydra is even more massive. So I could see them reprinting this card, like, especially because look at it. The abilities on it feel amazing. Doubling counters is something we've seen on a number of cards, right? Like, so this is totally, to me, probably the #1 pick out of all the cards that we're going to look at here for reprint action. And I mean, obviously, as a mono green enthusiast, I would totally be cool with that. Now, let's move on to the next card we have to talk about, and that is the Zathra Gorgon. All right, so there are also Gorgons on this particular plane. This one is 1 black and 5 for a 3/6 with Death Touch. Pay 1 black and 2, tap it, put a petrification counter on target creature. It gains Defender and becomes a colorless artifact in addition to its other types. Its activated abilities can't be activated. So this is a really interesting card to me for a number of reasons, right? First of all, Gorgons are really funky. The idea that a Gorgon can turn you into stone is pretty intense. And just with a simple glance, you look into the eyes of the Gorgon and it's over for you. But what I really like about this one in particular is a lot of Gorgon's abilities require that they interact directly in terms of combat. So it's either an attacking or blocking style ability, right? So you have a scenario where if you're not attacking with the Zathra Gorgon or not using it to block, then its petrification abilities are useless, which always felt a little bit weird, because what's to stop a Gorgon from seeking somebody out in a non-combat capability? I mean, literally, with eyes that can turn people to stone, why would you even bother engaging in actual combat? I mean, I guess if you enjoy the visceral thrill of it, but ultimately, it's an ability that can be used from afar in almost a sniper-like way. And this sort of tapping, activating ability on target creature feels really, really right from a flavor perspective. From a distance, she can turn someone to stone, right? They gain Defender, so clearly they can't attack anymore. They're a colorless artifact, which is like a really interesting way of saying they've turned into a statue. And its activated abilities can't be activated. So it no longer has the ability to use any kind of skills that it once had. Interestingly enough, it can still block, but I don't know. I guess that's really just the planeswalker who owns the creature kind of heartlessly teleporting it in front of, like, it's like, boom, I'm going to move it right here in front of that creature that's coming to get me. Oh, a gigantic Colonial Hydra's coming to get me. I guess I'll just shovel some stone statues in the way. I just really like the fact that it's not combat-based. Flavor-wise, it 100% feels like a Gorgon turning someone to stone. So it's an absolute win and gives great flavor and kind of gives Gorgons from the plane of Shandalar their own particular identity that is less martial-based and more strategic, which is neat. I like that, all right? And then we have Kirkesh, the Onaki Ancient, all right? Now, this is a legendary ogre spirit. The ogres on Shandalar, specifically the Onaki, they exist in these catacombs, so you don't always see them, but there's some hulking brutes. So Kirkesh is 2 red and 2 for a 4/3. Whenever you activate an ability of an artifact, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 1 red. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy. So that's a very interesting concept, right? The fact that you can get an additional activation of any artifact for 1 red mana. Of course, mana abilities aren't included, but still, you can copy so many abilities for only 1 red. And this isn't a tap ability, right? This is just a whenever you happen to do it. The flavor text says, the Onaki were masters of dark arts and artifice. Their creations continue to spread foul magic, paving the way for their return. So at this point, when we're looking at Kirkesh from M15, at this point in the Onaki's history, they've been wiped out and they only exist in spirit form, but you have like the elders of their race looking for a way to bring their race back to physical existence. And who knows, maybe we'll be dealing with a Shandalar that's in the future where we get to see what's going on with the Onaki and maybe even specifically Kirkesh. And that is also something that's super exciting to me about the rumor of this return to the set, because I would love to have the information fleshed out about a whole number of different things specifically tied to Shandalar. Like this card right here. I really want to know what's up with Erd and the Obelisk of Erd, because this is the only reference to Erd in the entirety of Magic. We don't have any information saying what Erd is or what's happened there, nothing. But we have this crazy obelisk that was built there. And it's a 6 casting cost artifact. It's got Convoke, so you can tap your creatures, and each creature you tap will reduce the cost of it by 1 mana. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +2/+2. So it's this crazy obelisk that emanates power throughout the entirety of the plane. And the race that's attuned to the obelisk, every single member of that race gets a massive boost to their power and toughness. Like, think about elves. Elves are like 1/1. If this was attuned to elves, all the elves on the entire plane would be 3/3s, which is the equivalent of being as powerful and gigantic as an elephant. So it's just, this card is full of mystery to me. Look at it. It's this crazy sort of like twining together tree that's grown around a massive crystal that has this light emanating out of it, and you have a bunch of people around it worshiping it. Like, it just fuels the imagination. What is this about? I want to know. And it's possible that we'll get to learn if we return to Shandalar. So, my friends, let me know what you think of this concept, the whole like rumor and reprint idea for videos, because I really like it. If you want to know more about Shandalar, you want to come on a tour of Shandalar with me, then come on over to my Hatcher channel where I've been live streaming Shandalar. We'll be doing some more. We're going to keep it going. You get to see a bunch of little snippets from the world, just the overall flavor, and I will make sure to do a proper lore video going all over everything that's happened on Shandalar, because it has a crazy story. It's actually a plane that roams the multiverse. It's pretty nuts. Anyways, list of my top patrons scrolling on by. Go check out the Shandalar streams. See you next time, my friends.